I spent the weekend with a remarkable book. Its title, The Bull of Heaven. Nawar Al-Saadi is the author, and he's with me in studio this morning. Good morning.
Good morning.
Explain the title.
The Bull of Heaven. The Bull of Heaven is a mythical creature. It dates from the Babylonian time. And I am born in Babylon, born in Iraq. And the Bull of Heaven is a creature that represents strength, ferocity, prosperity. And I thought it was an apt title to somebody who's born in that region. And also a bull is representative of a strong and rising stock market. And I spent the last 15 years investing in the market.
Let's go back to the beginning of the book. Your first memories as a child, and this really struck me, were of war and of air raids. And I think you were 2 years old. And you remember, but what is it like growing up in that kind of an environment?
That's correct. Now, I don't remember when exactly that raid took place, but that's certainly my first memory. Now, it's important to keep in mind when I was born in 1978, 2 years after that, the Iraq-Iran war started, and it ended in 1988. So for about 8 years, I lived through war every day. And I didn't know better. I didn't have a benchmark. I didn't know how it would feel to live in a place where there is no war. So for me, was going to school, going out, and dealing with an air raid or a missile strike was part of living. So I guess for somebody who lived in peace and tranquility would find that difficult. But for me, that was the daily routine.
And how do you think that has affected you? And what do you think today? When you look, and I was just saying in my last segment, it seems incredible to me that the government as it is today in Iraq is actually calling on the United States for military help.
The word Iraq and military has been connected together for a very long time. So it's been one war after another war. And I mean, I can't even count how many Gulf wars we have now. And I see certainly now in the news we're back to the Iraq problem. It certainly saddens me to hear Iraqis today and the world today talk about Shia Iraqis, Sunni Iraqis. When I left Iraq 24 years ago, we had only Iraqis, and that's it. And now we're divided in so many communities, and yet again, the U.S. is maybe planning to get involved. And I think a lot of our problems are also related to the fact that the U.S. got involved in Iraq in 1991 and later on.
No question. What was it like growing up under Saddam Hussein? And you write about it in the book. Your family had pretty close connections, if that's not friendly necessarily, but you interacted with, and your mother especially, with Saddam Hussein and your dad.
Well, I mean, we suffered like many Iraqis. My father was arrested and he was set to be executed in 1980. He was released from prison because my mother had the courage to go and meet Saddam Hussein and ask for forgiveness, and he did release him. I mean, they were made up charges, but in Iraq you don't need to prove anything. It's if they have a suspicion of something, then you can get killed for it. When I was older, in 1985, my father was arrested again under charges that he criticized the Saddam regime, and that was hard for us. I mean, I was old enough to remember we were all arrested, me, my sisters, my mom, my grandmother, and my father, obviously, and then we're taken to some police station or some unmarked building where my father was interrogated, and we were held for just under a day, and then we were released, and I did not see my father for 2 years after that.
But again, and one might think remarkably, he was released again.
Remarkably, my mother met Saddam Hussein again. My mother is a talented artist, and every time she played this trick, she made this beautiful painting, and she would gift it to the president and ask to meet with him, and Saddam, and playing his role as the be all and the god for all Iraqis. I mean, he had he had a decision over life or death, and he yet again he let my father walk away, but this time he was held for 2 years.
And then you all wound up in France.
Yes, I mean after 8 years of war, my parents decided that we should go on a trip. So we went to Europe in 1990, July 2nd, 1990, and while we were in Europe, Iraq invaded Kuwait. So yet again, we were exposed to another prospect of war, and so we stayed there, and it became. I would say transformed from a short trip to permanent exile, and I think that was also difficult, despite the fact that we did escape the Gulf War, the 1991 Gulf War, but we were not prepared to leave the country, and then I ended up growing up in France.
And then somehow wound up in Halifax, Canada.
Well, and I never really felt home in France. I mean, it was not a choice for me to be in France. So I was looking for a home. I was looking for some place where I could feel at home, and I initially went to Halifax to study finance in St. Mary's University. And I immediately fell in love with the country. I mean, it's a beautiful country, beautiful nature. The people are as beautiful as the nature that was surrounding me, and I really felt at home. And I wanted to come back to Canada. Unfortunately, I could not stay there immediately. Again, having an Iraqi passport, you need to go through a process. You need to apply, so I went back to France, and I stayed there for about 10 years before I had the opportunity to come back.
And was that when you were helping your father, who had bought a hotel?
Yes, my father. I mean, he changed his profession to a hotelier because he needed a job to stay in France, and
so he bought a job.
He bought a job. Fortunately, he had the means to do so, and that's the details of that story is in the book. But he got into the hotel business. He didn't know what he was doing, and we had quite a few difficulties. And the family was at the verge of bankruptcy in 2006, and this is where I got involved, and I helped extract the family from that ordeal.
So you had to become suddenly knowledgeable in the hotel industry, which had not been part of your game plan.
No, I mean I did work for a while in the reception when I was a teenager, helping my father. I do have both a marketing and a finance background, so I had a basic understanding of business. But yeah, I mean ultimately I had to take control of a hotel and run it and deal with a very complex regulatory system in France. I mean the French are well known for bureaucracy. They invented bureaucracy, so it was difficult, but I did navigate through it, and eventually in 2009, once all these problems were resolved, I moved to Vancouver.
But before that, when you were in Halifax, wasn't that when you actually got into the you didn't call it day trading. I'm trying to remember the term.
Swing trading.
Swing trading.
Correct.
You got into the swing trading business by taking half the money your dad had given you for tuition and started playing the market.
Yeah, that's correct. I mean, if we put it in context, that was 97, 98, so we were in the middle of the dot-com boom, the technology mania, and if you bought a stock, it doubled or tripled in a few days or few weeks at the most. So I thought that was easy money. I loved trading the market. I mean, I knew that there was money to be made in the market. And I put half of my tuition money in it, and I was successful. I did graduate from university, and I transformed a small stake into a small fortune.
From what to what? You started with $25,000?
That's correct. Started $25,000. I graduated with $640,000, thinking I was some kind of financial genius. I was not. The dot-com crash ultimately took place, and I lost everything. Well, not everything. I had $500 left.
$500?
Yes.
Well, we'll get to how you recouped that. But I had to laugh out loud because you were talking in the book about your frustration when other students were playing with their computers online, and you were desperately trying to get onto a computer in order to make some money, and you were watching your fellow students basically fiddle away their spare time and taking up the computers.
Well, I mean, it's. I mean, I had a totally different interest from my fellow students and of my friends. I mean, I was, everybody was, teenagers. People were 18 years old, 19 years old. Busy with music, movies, and I'm watching CNN and looking, the next IPO and. I don't know whether I was wired in this way because I had to mature maybe faster than my friends but it was frustrating. But at the same time, I also felt special that I was doing something nobody else was doing, and I think I learned a lot from that experience, and I don't regret getting involved in the market at an early age.
When we come back from your $600,000 to $500 to where you are today, where you told me during the news break you pretty much do what you want at 36. Talking with Nawar Al-Saadi, his remarkable story is told in his new book, The Bull of Heaven. We talked about him growing up in a war zone in Baghdad, to going to France, to Paris, getting involved in the stock market, coming to Canada, to Halifax, and then back to France. You went from having more than $600,000 accumulated while you were in school in Halifax. That went down to $500. How did you come back?
Well, it took 3 years for me to save enough capital to get involved again in the market. And during these 3 years, I went to work for my family. As you mentioned earlier, my father acquired a hotel, and I started working with him and putting some money on the side while keeping an eye on the stock market. And during that period, I tried to learn as much as I could about investing. So I read books, biography of Warren Buffett, read books from Benjamin Graham and Philip Fisher, the classic value investors. And by 2004, I built another $25,000 in savings, and I thought that I could give it another go and stay away from leverage this time. But I did trade options as well as stocks, and I think it was early 2004 when I invested in a company called Charter Communication, and stock tripled, and there I was again with a big stake, and within a year. I built another fortune, $500,000, and most of it profit, but yet again I fell again in the same trap, and I took excessive risks, and as they say, fool me once, shame on you; fool me twice, shame on me, and I was devastated the second time around because I could not enjoy it for a long period of time. Shortly after after I recovered all my capital, I actually lost it again, and that was a big blow for me.
But still, you went back at it.
Well, life taught me to be persistent, and it's. I figured that I still needed to understand the game better, and there was more homework to do, and I actually went back again in the market in 2008 in a period where everybody was running away from the financial markets. And this time around, I stayed away completely from leverage, from options. I focused on fundamentals. I controlled my emotions, fear, greed, and I was patient. I bought good companies. I stuck with them, and I think the difficulties I've had or the experiences I had in early 2000 and 2005 after having made a fortune and lost it, these lessons were very valuable to me in 2008. In a way, I had my own financial crisis before the world had its financial crisis, and I was able to capitalize on that. And the third time around, I was extremely successful, and by the age of 31, I had enough capital to retire if I wanted to.
How much capital is that?
Well, let's say just under $10 million ultimately what I hit with my trading.
So how did you pick good companies? When you were coming out of that down market, how did you decide what companies were going to survive, what companies were going to climb out and do well?
Well, I stayed away from technology. I stayed away from speculative industries, things I focused on earlier in my career. I just invested in boring industries. I looked at, real estate, energy. I know Canada has a lot of these industries, and maybe they're not as boring, but for the rest of the world, they're not the most exciting industries to invest in. But I focus on industries that I knew that would ultimately come back once the market recover and that period of fear goes away. So, I did not need specific financial knowledge to figure out, for example, a company like DuPont or a company like Caminco, which is now Tech Resources, or others would ultimately rebound.
And your choice to live in Vancouver intrigues me. You loved Halifax. You didn't particularly like Paris, which is a city most people fall in love with the first time they go. So what is it about British Columbia, what is it about Vancouver that makes you so happy?
Well, it is the best place on earth. I think that's our motto. So I just skipped to that immediately. I loved Canada. I did find Halifax to be quite cold. And I find BC and Vancouver to be a larger city, just the right size. It's not too large to be as large as Paris or New York or London, where you get lost in the midst of a big city, and neither a small one where you're also kind of cut off from the world. So I think it's just the right size, and I think the nature is very beautiful around us. I think British Columbians are very welcoming. I mean, I do feel home. I call this place home. I can't wait to be a Canadian, hopefully in the next 2 months, and be a British Columbian. So I think it was the right choice. I've been here for 5 years, and I hope I'll be here for another 50 years.
So the next Canada Day will be a particularly special one for you.
Already this one, I think, would be, since I did pass my citizenship test 3 weeks ago. So now just a couple of months of waiting, but I could almost call myself Canadian, even though that I feel it at heart, but officially it's not on paper yet.
I sometimes joke that we settle our disputes on the open line rather than having violent outbreaks of war all around us. You must find peace being here.
Absolutely. I think Canadians and British Columbians are very lucky to live in a peaceful, prosperous country and a province. I see some people sometimes going through difficulty or dealing with an ordeal, and I'd like to remind them that the rest of the world is dealing with way bigger, much larger problems, that ultimately, if you were to compare those with what some people are dealing with here today, they will find that these issues are minuscule in comparison.
Nomar, thank you for being here. I really enjoyed your book, The Bull of Heaven,